The island of Crete has a character like no other. High mountains and gorges are part of its personality. Centuries-old footpaths lead across the White Mountains of South West Crete. All this within a few kilometres of the sea, but at a height of around 2,000 metres. It is a challenging landscape and not for the unprepared, but it is a compelling one, with unique plants and scenery like nowhere else on Earth. We based our Cretan holiday in the White Mountains area of Western Crete. Today's walk hopefully takes us to the top of the majestic mountain, Pachnes.
Just left Anopoli, turned off and heading up towards the start of the track up onto the White Mountains. We're going to drive to the end and park, and according to the map in Anopoli it takes about an hour and a half to walk to the summit of Pachnes from there. And we're just on the low plateau here and it's beautiful, the flowers are magnificent, it's early May. The olive trees are looking nice and healthy, but underneath them is a carpet of yellow little daisies. Well, we have just seen I've seen several coming up, but they've just confirmed we've just seen a lovely golden oriole close up.
Lefka Ori, the White Mountains, or Madares, meaning without coverage and bare of vegetation, is a mountain range located in western Crete in the Chania area. They consist mostly of limestone, from light grey to a bluish or black colour. Snow covers the peaks until late in spring. There are over 30 summits over 2,000 metres, the highest being Pachnes at 2,453 metres. Crete has around 2,000 species of plants, and 10% of these grow only in Crete and nowhere else in the world.
Well, the road's blocked with snow towards the top. There's some big snow drifts just round this corner, so we've turned round and parked up. The waymarked route cuts across here below the road and goes up the valley. We'll have to see how far we get. It might not be doable yet today. There might be too much snow.
I wanna be with you, be with you, be with you.
Time to replenish the water supplies. There's a hole in my bucket. Oh, nice.
I wanna be with you, be with you, be with you,
So it's taken us about an hour and 3/4 to reach the road head, so we're just having a 5-minute break before we attempt the summit.
We parked here, so that's where we've had to walk from because of the snow drifts. Come up the old track, got on the road, walked all the way up the road to here, and we're just now getting back onto the path up to Pachnes.
So we're going to have a biscuit then?
Having a biscuit first and a drink.
no matter what we do.
First shepherd's hut that we've come to.
That hook's in there to hold the door shut.
We first camped here in the early 90s, not in the shepherd's hut but behind a stone windbreak, filtering the water from the well.
You go up Pachnes and I'll stay here.
Today we could make our escape. I'd follow you, I'd follow you, I'd follow you. I believe in you. We could wander the earth, we could wander the earth. We could death or birth, we could death or birth. I'd follow you.
As we approached the summit, the wind was so intense, Juliet had to lean forward before taking the next step. With me being moderately heavier, I of course had no problem against the force 10 gale.
Power, there was a fire on the shore. I'd follow you. I'd follow.
The second time we summited on Pachnes, back in 1995, we brought an aluminium box and visitor's book, now sadly gone, and we sent everybody a badge who sent us a photo from the summit. We received photos and letters from all over the world.
Here we are on the top of Pachnes, and it's taken us
3 3/4 hours from where the road was blocked. But the wind is... How fast do you think the wind is?
I can hardly it keeps knocking me over, so I don't know, gusts. I wouldn't like to say 60 miles an hour perhaps. Do you think it could be?
You can hardly stand up against it. That's why we're in this little shelter now. Just look how these cliffs have expanded with the altitude. We decided to walk to the end of the ridge to get better views over the distant Samaria Gorge and the Potamos Valley below. As the wind intensity began to increase, we thought we'd beat a hasty retreat.
I couldn't stand against it, I had to brace myself, and then it nearly knocked me over when I turned round. Did see a big wind cloud hovering above these mountains last night, didn't we? A sign of things to come.
I wanna be with you.
Today we're going caving to Dracalaci. We're just on our way to try and find the Dracalaci cave, which means the dark one, I think. And so hopefully we can find it. It's quite difficult to find. But before that, we're just about to cross the Alladhina Gorge. This is a Bailey Bridge and is a prefabricated truss bridge developed by the British during World War II. The 70-metre long bridge is decked with thick wooden planks which rumble like distant thunder when vehicles drive over them. Plans to reduce the noise by the local authority were objected to by the locals, who actually like the noise because this lets them know when people are entering or leaving their village. The Alladhina Bailey Bridge is the highest Bailey Bridge in the world, and during the summer months you can actually do a bungee jump from here. We are now back on the road towards Agios Ioannis, and on entering the village we just had to stop and film the flowers at the roadside. A 20-minute drive on the track behind the village takes us to the start of the walk. Well, here we are at the end of the road, so all we've got to do now is find the start of the path. Well, it looks like it's going to be a tough walk.
We're not sure that whether we're in the right place to start the path to the cave, because we went higher and we think it was just a sheep track, so we're just dropping back down to that path that was cairned. We dropped down to the lower path and it hasn't gone down anymore really. It's a lovely walk now, so we're carrying on. We think this is the right path to Dracalaci cave, and it's lovely through the woods, listening to the birds. There's a cuckoo calling, and got my binoculars ready, hoping to see things like golden orioles and anything else really. You never know what we might see. We've also heard an owl this morning, but we're not sure what sort. I'm admiring these trees, just looking in the centre of this old tree on this bank. This is one that is really healthy, but looking at the way it's spread out from the centre at the bottom of its base, and it must be so old. You can just see all the swirls and the shapes in the bark. It's a beautiful tree. After a short scramble up a steep slope, and we're sort of standing on the top of the Alladhina Gorge where it branches into different smaller valleys. We've got to the entrance to Dracalaci cave. On this top of it, it's like a scree slope we're standing on, so we've come from down there. The cave's here and it goes in at a very steep angle, and there are two climbing ropes here. Have a look, we need to put the head torches on.
The cave Dracalaci is a long underground river on the southern slopes of the White Mountains. It has a length of 1.9 kilometres and is richly decorated with stalagmites and stalactites. Sadly, we could only go in about 200 metres as it was early in the season and the cave was flooded.
Can you put your torch on there?
That's got to be a river.
Yeah. It's either the wind or a river. If you were a cavey, you'd know what it was.
What did you think?
Well, exciting. That noise, that roar at the end. It was either a big river carrying all the melting snow off the mountains, off the White Mountains, down to the sea, or it was the sound of like rushing air through the system, but I think it was the water. Just exploring the two alternative routes up to Kevlar from more or less from where we've parked. This is the longer but gentler way, and this leads from the wells at the bottom of the valley. There's 3 wells full of water.
Well.
Yeah. So we're just about to reach the join, I think, and then we'll head down the other alternative route, which is shorter but steeper.
Today's walk takes us to Cormacopos Cave and the small summit of Papachafala.
We're parked in Ioannis and we're doing a walk today to the Cormacopos Cave, which is another cave, because yesterday we were on a walk to Dracolarchi. Today we're walking to Cormacopos, and then if we have time we're going to walk down to a viewpoint over the coast. Clever gate. This area is a maze of old paths, and also you can see the remains of old field systems and terracing and old ruins, lots of ruins of villages long deserted. And I read in a book that it said that in this area 70,000 people, there was a population of 70,000 in this area hundreds of years ago. We've not been here for 20 years, but things don't seem to have changed much. And I think the Svakians that live here today are still pretty much self-sustaining, because they're still growing cereal crops in the fields, which I suppose are for making local bread. And they've got the olives, and they've got huge sets of beehives in the fields, and they're all propped up on old tyres. It's a good way of recycling car tyres.
Honey production is prolific in the area, with hundreds of beehives scattered over the hillsides. Cretans were some of the first beekeepers in Europe to keep bees for honey making, and so are renowned for their beekeeping skills, and Cretan honey is amazingly delicious. The honey is made from the nectar collected from flowering wild herbs, such as thyme and pine trees growing on the hillsides. In the Svakia region, you can see a huge number of wooden beehives, usually painted blue and positioned near trees. Not only do the trees provide shade and protection from the wind, but also the bees use them as landmarks to find their hive when they return from foraging. As the summer heat increases and the plants lower in altitude stop flowering, the beehives are transported to new locations, higher in the mountains where the flowers are still in bloom.
And then they've also got the sheep and the goats, so it looks to me that they're still living as they always have done. I'm not very good at languages. We got to this point in the path where it forks, and one way it says this word and the other it says cave, so we're going to the cave first. But we know on the map there's a viewpoint called Papachafala, so we've just worked out some of the Greek alphabet. P-A-P, A-K-E as us, that must be an F, A, L, Hey, Papa Kevlar. Standing high up now, just going round towards the cave, I think. And we're overlooking the Alladhina Gorge. So the Alladhina Gorge is just below us. And the next valley over the next hill, there's a little castle on the end of it. That's the Sap Samaria Gorge. And the boat, the Daskalodgianis, has just left Samaria, heading back towards Lutro. We've arrived here after about an hour, and we're just going to have a look in. We don't think it goes very far in. It's a lovely spot though, with fantastic views over the sea, and we're quite high up. I suppose we must be 2,000 feet up, do you think? Something like that.
What's in there?
A well. The bucket there. Seeing this here, this foam, shepherd's bed. He's got his drinking mug hanging up there, and he's got his barbecue thing on the wall ready for cooking a bit of meat. So we must stay here. It's quite nice really, nice and cool. We set up the stealth cam at the water trough because it's brilliant for the bird life here. Birds coming in to drink constantly. And we've seen some beautiful red coloured crossbills, or certainly I think they were crossbills or some sort of red finch. And also on the rock over there, first time ever we've seen blue rock thrush, which we're very pleased with as well. Heading back, we've taken the turning to the right, which takes you to Papa Kevlar, which hopefully will give us a good view of Alladhina Gorge and also over the coast to the sea. We're halfway up Papa Kevlar, and since we were last here in the year 2000, the locals have opened up a lot of the old paths, and this one takes you to a point where, well, we're just looking over Rumeli. You can see the harbour down there. That's the bottom of the Samaria Gorge, and you've also got the Alladhina Gorge down here. So we're just heading up now. You can just see it's not far to the top of Papa Kevlar, where hopefully the views will be even better. This is the summit of Papa Kevlar, and up there is Alladhina Gorge, where we're hoping to walk up along the bottom at least, and maybe to the top tomorrow even possibly. And behind here on the horizon, that's Gingalos, the one with little bits of snow on the top, and below that is the Samaria Gorge.
Today sees us back on the track behind Ioannis to walk up Alladhina Gorge.
We're leaving quite early in the morning because it's a fairly big walk. It involves walking up that up to that col, up that narrow valley, and then it's on a very, very old shepherd's path. I don't know how many 100 years old it is, but it's a beautiful old path. We've been up there before when it's been all misty. And so today hopefully we'll have good views, and then as you go around the corner underneath the summit mountain ridge, underneath the cliffs there's a path up apparently to the top, which we might be able to do. It's deliciously cool shade made by these centuries old cypress trees that are growing up the bank behind each other on this just pure sort of limestone scree. You wonder how they find enough water.
Trees grow up to an altitude of 1,650 metres in the White Mountains. Cypress trees are some of the most strangely shaped trees you will ever see, their shapes being partly due to their great age. These are some of the oldest trees in Europe, being well over 1,000 years old. Their branches take centuries to grow in this dry and windswept landscape. Traditionally, and over the centuries, shepherds have used timber for firewood. Some of the best Cretan cheese is reputed to come from the White Mountains, where sheep and goats graze on the scattered herbs and plants. The wood was used for fires to heat sheep milk and goat's milk in the cheese-making process. Traditional cheese making still takes place in remote stone huts high in the White Mountains.
Well, here we are, after about an hour and 25 minutes, on top of the first col, looking towards the Samaria Gorge. Which way's the path now?
The wall built up here, then it does a bit of a zigzag and just slowly climbs up and then goes around that far end. Getting very exciting now. The old path's along a cliff edge and it feels so special, it feels magical, as if there are still spirits wandering about in the crannies and caves of this ancient pathway. And also behind us you ought to see these crystals. And you go round here under this big rock face, and then on that far corner, that's where it'll be somewhere there I think we'll be going. We've got to the spring which is shown on the map here, so that's where we are now. Called Zorandau. We're just going to go to where the path starts to descend towards Potamos. And we're hoping to take the path up to the summit. Looks like a very steep climb according to this map.
At this point there is a vital spring here to replenish water if you are heading up into the mountains for longer walks.
We're at the turn off now, there's a big cairn behind us. And the path descends now to Potamos that way. And there's a cairn there, so we're going to see, anyway, work our way up to that ridge there. And then the summit of Zarana Keflar's to our right behind this big rock face. We've climbed up a very steep and rocky slope and got onto the col, the summit ridge, and there's a big cairn overlooking the sea on that side, and then a smaller cairn on the summit to the right, so onward for the final few minutes to the top, and then we can have something to eat.
Well, here we are on the summit of Zarana Keflar at 2139 metres, and that's about 6,750 feet, and the views are absolutely spectacular.
We're looking up to Paknes over there, and the summit is to the left of that long ridge of snow. Just see some white on the top, which probably is the pile of stones. And then coming round, looking down the coast towards Francacastello, and below here we've got where we're staying at Anopoli, and then coming right round you can see the entrance to the Alladhina Gorge where it goes into the sea. Well, we're going to have a well-earned rest, and I'm going to take my boots off and get my white feet out for half an hour to try and match them up. It's taken us about 3.5 hours to get to the summit from the car, and we've been taking it slowly because we've been doing lots of stops for photographs and looking at things.
The White Mountains are a very unforgiving landscape, and the jagged rocks can cut some boots to ribbons, and distance is not measured in miles or kilometres, but in hours.
Today we're visiting Franco Castello Castle, and you can go into it. It costs €2 to go in, and we're here in May. If we come early in the morning, just as it was coming light, we might have been able to see the dew men, which are supposedly ghosts, which rise out of the sea in May or early June. And these are the ghosts of soldiers that were killed in a battle between the Greeks and the Turks many centuries ago. Some people think it might be due to a meteorological phenomenon, but it is said that in the war, a German patrol group opened fire on these ghostly shadows, thinking that they were real people.
The castle has a simple rectangular shape with a tower at each corner and the remains of the Venetian coat of arms above the main gate. The castle was built by the Venetians in 1371 to 1374 as a garrison to impose order on the rebellious Sfakia region.
There's a fire in the house. It's coming after me. It's letting me in. It's drawing me in.
Today we're getting the ferry from Sfakion to Agia Rumeli, and we're going to walk along the beach to the Alladhina Gorge and just do a short walk up it for a couple of hours and then get the return boat back at 5:30.
After about 20 minutes, we soon approached the little port of Lutro, which is only accessible by boat or on foot. There is a lot of frantic activity when the boat comes in, as this is how most of the supplies arrive. People with wheelbarrows and people scurrying on and off with suitcases. But very soon, Lutro returns to its calm, collected self.
We stayed here over 20 years ago, in the 90s, and it was much quieter then. Fewer hotels and fewer cafes. But it's still pretty much the same.
This is a photograph of Lutro when we first stayed here in the early 1990s. We were soon on our way, speeding away from Lutro, heading towards Agia Rumeli.
It's taken us an hour and a quarter to get to Agia Rumeli, and we're just going to set off now along the beach, walking eastwards along the coast for about a mile to the start of the Alladhina Gorge.
How far off are we?
Probably over halfway now, say probably half a mile, less than half a mile now. Start of the gorge now, the Alladhina or the Alladhina Gorge, and it's taken 3/4 of an hour to walk along the beach, and you wouldn't want to do it in the hottest time in the summer. It's hot enough today in May. On we go. Just got to the top of the first boulder fan, and huge boulder slope, probably 400 feet, 500 feet high, 200 to 300 metres high perhaps. And we've got to a shepherd's hut now. There's a cutting in the rock there, and there's a fence, there's a wall and a little gateway, and somebody's piled some old pottery on the gate post, and there's some here. It makes you think, how old is it? Who made this pottery? And how long have people been living up this gorge? can't have a rest here because the mosquitoes are absolutely terrible. So we got up the gorge, we walked for an hour and a quarter, and we've just passed a large side valley which goes up towards Cormacopos Cave, and I guess we're about here where the number 11 is, somewhere roughly about here.
I don't know if you know this, but there's a new mosquito deterrent out. Have a look at this, it works fantastically well.
Sadly we've got to turn round now, because we know this path goes on and on and on into the mysterious heart of the White Mountains. I was wondering why the mountains on Crete were so high, so I've been reading up on the geology of the island, and it's all to do with the fact that the African tectonic plate is moving relentlessly towards the Eurasian tectonic plate, causing the land in between to be squeezed ever upwards. So here on Crete, earthquakes aren't unknown, the mountains are still rising higher, and when it rains, the water cuts down through the limestone and makes these fantastic gorges. We're nearly back now, and we're coming out of the gorge, and there's a path we want to explore now which goes up. As you're going out, it's on the right, and it's an old path that leads up to some high meadows and a ruined castle, so we might do that in a couple of days' time. Today we're walking from Alladhina, and we're doing a circular walk down through Livaniana and dropping down into the gorge there, and then walking back up the gorge and hopefully past Alladhina to the furthest way out of the gorge, and then we're going to walk back through Alladhina back to the car. That's Livaniana there that we're heading down to, and beyond that we drop into the gorge, into the Alladhina Gorge. Above it now, the village of Livaniana here, just catching the church. Probably not going to go down to it now, we're going to walk the other way towards a little church perched on the edge of the gorge, and then by that path down.
Well, after spending 3.5 hours under this lovely olive tree, it's time to move on.
Go from one bit of shade to the next, so we're heading down into the gorge now, and it looks like it's in shade in the gorge because it's getting on a bit. It's probably 4 o'clock, so carry on to the next tree.
There are around 100 gorges in Crete. In the Sfakia region, there is an extremely high concentration of gorges. Here, 15 magnificent parallel gorges have formed, and many of these can be seen from the ferry as it journeys between Orosfakion and Suya.
Nearly down, nearly on the bottom of the gorge floor now. I'm going to walk upstream towards the metal bridge that spans the chasm of Alladhina.
It wasn't long before we reached the huge boulder choke that blocks the Alladhina Gorge. When we first climbed the gorge in the 90s, there was only a fixed rope to haul yourself up on, and then several years later, there was the luxury of a rope ladder.
This is the new alternative path to save climbing up the metal ladders, which I think would be a much safer way of doing it, particularly on the way down. Just about to walk underneath the bridge now. The bridge in front of us was built in the early 1980s, and before the bridge was built, the only way across this gorge for the villagers was to go up and down on the lovely old ancient zigzag path that we're going to go up on in a minute. So the villages to the west, Alladhina and Agios Ioannis, it must have been a massive change in for them in their lifestyle in the village, that they had easy access to the outside world. We're heading up out of the gorge on the old path up towards Alladhina. This was the old path before the bridge, so this was the main thoroughfare through to the villages.
The almost abandoned village of Alladhina dates back to at least the 1500s. Historic documents describe a village called Aradin, which was an important village, which even made its own coinage. Alladhina has always been referred to as a place of brave men. There are many tales of Sfakians putting up strong resistance to large numbers of invaders. However, in 1948, the village almost destroyed itself when a vendetta broke out between two families over a stolen goat bell. The vendetta resulted in many deaths, but was probably resolved in the Cretan way, either by members of the feuding families marrying each other, or by the families exchanging valuable gifts such as goats, sheep, or textiles such as loomed carpets.
This afternoon we're doing a short walk from Agios Ioannis to a viewpoint. It's a new walk and it's shown on the map. It runs due south of the village really. Heading south, but it's terrace after terrace with little areas where they must have cultivated, perhaps grew, I would think, cereal crops in these terraces when there was a very big population living on this plateau. Beekeeping is a really important local industry. Just walking down here through the woods now, if you just listen, above in the pine trees, they must be feeding on something in the trees. Just the buzzing of the bees is incredible. The Elijah's or Eligas Gorge comes out, and it's just a dark shade halfway along. It's a tiny chasm really, and it's the entrance to where this gorges into the sea, and it's a real significant feature because that goes all the way up for miles, right up to the top, to Potamos and the basin where all the crocuses are. And we were walking in it the other day, and it's so steep like this nearly all the way, because it has to climb about 5,000 feet, doesn't it, to Potamos at least.